You're watching PM Agenda. As we've been reporting the last hour or so, the government does have the numbers secured for its migration bill to bring back temporary protection visas to pass. The vote hasn't happened yet. It may not happen until very late tonight, or indeed early tomorrow morning, probably late tonight though, with Ricky Muir now on board, as Sky News understands, with the Palmer United Party, which will give the government the 6 of 8 crossbench votes it needs to get this through the Senate. With me now is the Manager of Government Business in the Senate and the Assistant Minister for Social Services, Mitch. Fifield, thanks for joining us. Can I just start by asking, are you able to confirm that the government does now have the numbers locked in for this bill?
Well, David, we're optimistic, but one thing is for certain in the Australian Senate, you only count something as being in your corner once the vote has actually happened. But I've got to say, we've had very good and constructive discussions with the crossbenchers, and I've got to say, contrary to what you might hear from some commentators, they've been terrific to deal with, but we are optimistic that this legislation will go through.
All right, so you've spoken obviously to the crossbenchers today, including Ricky Muir?
Well, Scott Morrison has been in contact with each of the crossbenchers. I've been talking to the crossbenchers, particularly on procedural arrangements in the Senate. But look, the vote happens when the vote happens, but the signs at the moment are good, David.
All right, so when will the vote actually happen? Are you any clearer on that than I am?
Well, the motion which went through the Senate sees the Senate sitting until the migration bill is dealt with. We will probably, however, if things are still unresolved at 11 o'clock tonight, suspend the Senate and resume at 9 o'clock tomorrow. But it may well be that we reach a conclusion tonight. But the Senate is the master of its own destiny, so we're just going to have to wait and see.
So what's holding up things at the moment? Is Labor filibustering? Is that what you're suggesting ahead of a vote, or what's going to drag it out here tonight?
Oh, look, the Australian Labor Party are filibustering. They're stacking the Speaker's list. They're trying to use every procedural manoeuvre possible to stop this bill coming to a vote, and David, sadly, that's been typical of the Australian Labor Party. When
to be fair, though, you guys did it in opposition. You've even done it in government just earlier this week, wanting to avoid getting to that higher education vote while you were still trying to get the numbers.
Well, David, when as the government of the day you don't have the numbers in your own right, in a chamber, in the Senate in this case, management of the chamber and management of legislation is a shared responsibility of all senators. Labor are being obstructionist at every stage, and I've got to say, when we were in opposition, we were much more cooperative. We did recognise that there was a national interest to pursue, that there was legislation that the chamber agreed upon, and we're even seeing the Labor Party filibustering legislation that they themselves agree upon. And in fact, one Labor senator said to me, look, just because we happen to support a piece of legislation, don't think we've got any obligation to make life easy for you. Now, that's absurd when it comes to legislation that Labor themselves support, and we've seen that. We know that Labor are blocking $28 odd billion worth of savings measures, including $5 billion that they themselves propose. So this is a particularly obstructionist opposition.
Well, that certainly would be ridiculous if it's a piece of legislation they're supporting. This is a piece of legislation. We know Labor is very much opposed to the Greens as well. The bring back of temporary protection visas, the creation of new safe haven enterprise visas. Can I ask you, I know this isn't your portfolio area, but can I ask you, what is the point, the overarching point of putting these people on temporary protection visas rather than permanent visas when it's got nothing to do with sending a signal? Because anyone else who tries to come to Australia automatically goes offshore, not to Australia.
Well, I think temporary protection visas, or as they're sometimes called, safe haven visas, are part of the range of measures that deny people smugglers a product to sell. Temporary protection visas essentially say that you might be someone who's genuinely a refugee. You have the opportunity to be in a place of safety until circumstances change. So it is an important part of the effort to take away a product for people smugglers to sell.
Okay, so just finally, Mitch Fifield, we will get a vote tonight unless it gets to 11 o'clock, then you'll come back in the morning.
That's right. It's tonight or tomorrow, and I think what people probably don't always appreciate is that that the House of Representatives is a bit like a waterfall. You put something at the top, it's going to come out the bottom. The Senate is more like a long meandering river with currents and eddies and the odd billabong along the way. So the passage is less predictable. But if the Australian Labor Party were a little more responsible, then we could see resolution on issues quicker. But I should mention, David, that in this Parliament we've actually got 140 pieces of legislation through the Senate, so we are working methodically in the Senate as a government, and we are getting results. And you'd shoot me if I didn't mention the fact that we have abolished the carbon tax, we have got rid of the minerals resource rent tax,
we've heard
and
that
we
a few
have
times today.
legislated. That's right. So we are getting good results in the Senate despite Labor's intransigence.
And I like your analogy, particularly after the waterfall in the roof of the House of Reps yesterday during question time. Mitch Fifield,
we've got water on our minds.
You do. Thank you very much for that, and we hope you're not there all night tonight in the Senate, but we will keep our eyes on it. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a quick break. In fact, before we do, let me just update you.